The Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
The Jacksonville Symphony presents Take 6 on March 29th. A cappella jazz, R&B, and gospel vocals blend with the full power of the Jacksonville Symphony live in Jacoby Symphony Hall. Tickets available at jaxsymphony.org. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, if you've tried driving downtown Jacksonville recently, you may have noticed a bit of gridlock. We're asking city planners and traffic experts why and when you might see some relief. Then, breaking the fast and building community. We tell you about this year's Experience Ramadan event. And religious faith and psychological trauma take center stage at the Lumen Repertory Theater's performance of Agnes of God. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or tag us on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says the reciprocal tariffs he plans to impose next month might just be the beginning. NPR's Tamara Keith reports the president says there could be some pain ahead for the U.S. economy.
Trump made the comments in a sit-down interview on the Fox News program Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time.
He dismissed concerns raised by business leaders that the on-again, off-again tariffs in recent weeks have created uncertainty, saying that's just a talking point. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is announcing huge cutbacks at the U.S. Agency for International Development. Writing online, he says that after a 6-week review, 83% of the programs at USAID will be canceled. He claims these programs spent tens of billions of dollars that did not serve or even harmed the core national interests of the United States. However, the Trump administration has been ordered by a federal judge to pay certain foreign aid bills. That deadline is 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The Trump administration's cost-cutting effort is looking at shedding hundreds of federal government buildings. That could include selling them or canceling leases. NPR's Stephen Fowler says this will affect taxpayers.
Almost all of these buildings are actually outside of D.C., and a lot of them provide public services. I mean, think about how many people need to interact with the IRS and Social Security. There are more than 100 buildings on this list from those two agencies. There's also disparate impact on rural areas like the Farm Service Agency and Forest Service within the Agriculture Department, and Interior Department bureaus like the National Parks and the Fish and Wildlife Service.
NPR's Stephen Fowler reporting. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has announced new leadership for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, also known as ICE. NPR's Juliana Kim reports.
In a statement, Noem said she's appointing Todd Lyons as the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, a key role in President Trump's plans to aggressively crack down on immigration. Lyons had previously served as the assistant director of field operation in ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations, the branch responsible for identifying, arresting, and detaining immigrants without legal status. Noem also said she's appointing her former aide, Madison Sheehan, as ICE's next deputy director. On Sunday, Noem also told CBS's Face the Nation that she's ramping up polygraph tests for her department's employees, days after she said 2 workers leaked information about her department's operations.
This is NPR.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's now 9:04. Naval Hospital Jacksonville will now be open 24/7. Last week, the hospital announced it would be forced to close its emergency room at night due to staffing issues. But in a reversal, the hospital says thanks to the support from the Defense Health Agency and Navy Medicine, it will be able to remain open all night long. Governor Ron DeSantis is backing an effort to end property taxes in Florida. Caitlin Schiffer reports on how this potential move would impact community services and lead to an increase in prices.
Property taxes in Florida serve as a vital funding source for local services like public schools, law enforcement, and utilities. Without property taxes, this would lead to an increase in sales taxes. Gainesville Mayor Harvey Ward says if property taxes are cut, the cost of goods would become more expensive. Ward also says this will impact local government's abilities to provide critical services to the public.
I think we are headed towards some sort of reset because, people like when a police officer shows up when they call 911. People like it when an EMT shows up to help you through your heart attack. People like not having huge potholes in their streets. All those things are paid for from property taxes, every single one of them.
To approve these property tax changes, it will need an amendment to the state constitution that would need approval from 60% of Florida voters.
That's Caitlin Schiffer reporting. The rain should move out of northeast Florida by noon today. Highs reach the lower 70s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation at rwjf.org.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Angie Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, with some of downtown's main thoroughfares under construction, rush hour traffic has slowed to a crawl. We talked to city planners and traffic experts about why some of the slowdown is by design. Later in the program, we preview an evening of unity, reflection, and great food as part of this year's Experience Ramadan event. But first, upgrades and gridlock. Here to discuss what's happening to the downtown streetscape is Nina Sickler, Director of Public Works for the City of Jacksonville. Good morning, Nina.
Good morning, Ian. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. We're also joined by Lori Boyer, the CEO of the Downtown Investment Authority. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning.
And Katie Jeffries, traffic reporter and anchor at First Coast News. Good morning, Katie.
Hey, good morning.
So, Katie, I know that you've got just a short while with us this morning. So let's start with you if we can. I mean, today's weather is particularly bad. It's daylight saving. There's rain. But what are you hearing about the bottleneck of commuters, particularly in the downtown area right now?
Well, we've definitely heard of some slowdowns, some traffic concerns, of course, especially as people are going on Adams and Forsyth because they have the projects where they are converting those into two-way roads. So we know people have been caught in some of the gridlock there. You have to keep in mind, last week you also had a southbound closure on the Acosta Bridge from 9:30 to 3:30 as they did maintenance work. And we heard from some people that closure was backing up people trying to leave the downtown area, realizing they couldn't go southbound on the Acosta, then having to kind of reroute through downtown, which then added more traffic through downtown last week in particular. We've also had people just asking questions about what was being done along Bay Street. So, of course, you have the Innovation Corridor, you have the projects with JTA going in along Bay Street. So it's just a lot happening all at once, but I've always advised people to pay attention, make sure to look out for construction workers, and plan extra time through downtown.
And that particular bottleneck, when you talk about, Forsyth, Adams, those are big streets that people, particularly Adams when they're leaving town, Forsyth when they're coming into town for work, but Bay Street, because at that intersection where a lot of people are either going on the Acosta or on I-95 or over to Riverside, that's right where this construction is happening for the Innovation Center for JTA. And so that's adding another layer of complexity and traffic.
Right, and especially if you happen to hit it when the Main Street Bridge is up and people are trying to divert down towards the Acosta, you've got more people headed that way. But hopefully it should get better as these projects continue. You also, if you want to take Duval or Monroe, we've told people, there's no construction on those. Duval Street takes you westbound, and I believe Monroe takes you eastbound. So those are always options as well if you're trying to get through downtown to avoid some of the projects altogether.
Yeah, although we'll all remember that Monroe is sort of blocked by the courthouse, which was a decision
true.
made, I don't know, wisely many years ago. Nina, what is happening big picture? What are we seeing, and kind of why is this all seeming to happen and converge at the same time?
So the mayor has been very focused on making sure that our downtown projects do get completed. And so we have been meeting every 2 weeks to discuss progress. And we understand that there are numerous projects going on at one time, but the goal is to have that momentum and make sure that these projects are completed. So we started Adams and Forsyth back in October of last year.
Yeah.
And so we have gotten to the point we are just about ready to make that conversion.
Yeah. And so we mentioned Adams Forsyth. That's a big one. Church is also under some construction. Jefferson, which is kind of south out of the city to some of those same streets, the Acosta, the I-95, and to Riverside. Is that a coordinated plan, or is that just sort of all happening at the same time by chance?
So we were very focused on making sure that the two-way streets project stayed on track. And so when we recognized that those multiple projects were going to be occurring, we've had our traffic signal supervisor on site every morning, afternoon, and during lunchtime to observe the traffic patterns. We usually give people a few days to adjust their traffic patterns, but with so many projects going on at once, we were giving them fewer and fewer choices. So since the beginning of the conversion where we've closed streets, we have adjusted the timing along Forsyth and Adams.
The
to help
timing
alleviate
of the
the signal timing.
Okay.
Yes,
So that has been adjusted.
it has been adjusted, and it's adjusted every few days as we watch the patterns
Yeah.
change.
And as Katie said, there's certain times of the day. Obviously, rush hour is a problem, but if the Main Street Bridge is up, or as some happens, not working for a little bit, that one lane, I think, seems to be the real, because it kind of narrows down to one lane on Bay Street, and it really seems to become, a headache then. I'm hearing horns, which I don't usually hear too much of in downtown Jacksonville.
Right. One of the things we're really watching for is when traffic backs up multiple cycles and the east-west pattern is blocking the north-south. That's where we're really adjusting and trying to give more time to make sure that those intersections are cleared, and that reduces gridlock.
So, Lori Boyer, big picture, you were on a few months ago and you said this is what was coming, in part because of this two-way street design and the effort to return these one-way streets to two ways. So there's construction delay, but there's ultimately going to be some delay baked in to that design. Can you kind of remind us what that project is, why we're doing it in the first place?
Absolutely. So when you say delay, I probably would not use the word delay. I would say that the traffic on Forsyth and Adams and other streets that are eventually converted back to two-way will be slower, but it shouldn't be stopped. There shouldn't be the kind of congestion it signals, because remember, when you're talking about Forsyth is one way now and has 2 lanes one way, and Adams has 2 lanes the other direction, both streets will have a lane going to the interstate one way and another lane going to Ocean. So you'll have the same number of lanes. They'll just be on different streets. And what it achieves, though, is it achieves a slower traffic pace in the locations right in the core of downtown, which help with pedestrian safety. They help with retail success on the adjacent street fronts, if you will, where we have vacant storefronts. And it also helps with tax base. You'll see that in city after city after city that has restored two-way traffic. And really, when we converted to one-way, what we did is we killed a lot of downtown retail. And so this is an effort to bring that back.
And I was looking online. I mean, there are these sort of streetscapes that are presented when you are driving on a two-way street that are just invisible when you're driving on a one-way street. So if you're going, one way, say, for instance, north on Hogan Street, you might never see the adjacent buildings on your left and right as you're crossing through the intersection.
Correct. And part of that is speed, right? If you're traveling faster and you have timed signals so you can just keep going, you're paying attention to the cars on either side of you and the car in front of you and are not looking at the storefronts. Where if it's a single lane and your traffic pace is slower, so maybe you're going 25 rather than 40, then you have more opportunity to see, oh, so and so has a sidewalk sale today.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we are talking about some downtown traffic gridlock and some issues, and also sort of where that is taking us. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. Katie, as Lori says, the ultimate goal here is this, making these roads that were one way into two-way streets. Ultimately, are people going to accept the fact that the pace of downtown traffic is going to be slower by design?
I think they'll accept it eventually, and I think drivers will like not having the confusion of what way some streets are. Because I know that I'm sure you've experienced it. I know I've experienced it, seeing somebody going the wrong way on a one-way street. So hopefully we won't have that driver
I might have
confusion.
gone one way, wrong way. On
Where you start to
occasion.
turn and it's like, oh no, I can't go that way. So hopefully we won't have that driver confusion, which will enhance safety, like you said. But I think people will be okay with it. Half the time you're trying to find parking anyway, taking it easy, trying to find parking. So I think people will accept it.
Yeah. Lori, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the confusion generated right now is one of the things that is also a greater challenge with the construction congestion.
Explain that.
Well, because sometimes, so for example, the private development construction that is impacting Church Street. If you are coming from Jefferson Broad up toward that construction, when the road was closed, you have to divert 2 blocks and then make a left and then make a left back and go back 2 blocks. I mean, it becomes really complicated where if you have 2 ways on each block, a detour is 1 block around the block and it becomes easier. It also becomes easier to find parking. And part of what we have is a plan to have wayfarer signage and parking signage that are accompanying these upon completion. So it'll be easier to find parking garages as well as on-street spaces.
Yeah, there are those streets, where you have to basically do 8 street around about in order to get 1 street over just to, kind of get where you're going. This, though, is, part of this overall downtown, vision for a different series of streetscapes. What else will be included in that? I mean, are we going to be seeing, for instance, bike lanes? Are we going to be seeing more landscaping? Are the streets going to be in a different experience for pedestrians?
We are. We've got some great projects coming down the pike. Hogan Street Cycle Track will add a 2-way cycle track along Hogan Street, of course, as well as a widened and improved sidewalk and landscape and hardscape.
And where will that run from, that Hogan Street bike path?
It starts at the new Riverfront Plaza Park on the south. It extends north all the way through Union and State Street and up along State Street to connect along Laura Street.
Yeah. And Lori, this project timeline, can you give us sort of a sense as to, when, obviously it's underway. Let's start with the simple stuff like Adams and Forsyth, 2 big streets. Do we have an idea of how long it's going to take to get those finished?
Yes. And so let's talk about it in 2 phases. So the phase that is underway right now, which is impacting traffic and actually changing the direction of traffic, will be completed late this spring. We just heard from the JTA over the weekend, I believe, that their Bay Street closure is expected to be finished by the end of March. So that will relieve that pretty quickly. I don't know if that includes Jefferson or if that's only on Bay. And then in terms of Forsyth and Adams, there's a second phase coming, which, to your point, includes expanded sidewalks, tree planting, benches, things like that. But that will not impact the travel lane. You won't have to close the travel lane for that. And hopefully any place where they're doing a tree planting and they need to bring in a big truck or something, they can do that on the weekend or do that in the evening so that it's not disrupting traffic flow. Hogan Street is due to start very soon. And I know that we'll be watching the timing of it and making sure that whether Bay Street is completed before we start Hogan, how we do that. It will start down at the Water Street end. And the first thing is you'll see is the block from Water to Bay. So I expect that in the next several months. And, as you progress through, the Church Street closure is likely to exist for a year or two, off and on, periodically, because that is a private building under construction.
And what is the building that's being?
That is one of the Gateway Pearl Street District buildings.
Okay.
And frankly, they have another Pearl Street District building that they plan to be under construction on in April or May. So one of the challenges we have is in Jacksonville, we have not had this many projects going on at the same time in a long time. And people have grown very used to, at least contractors have grown very used to having lots of room to spread out and just close the sidewalk in the street and it won't bother anyone. And part of what we're going to have to do is be a little bit more restrictive about what we can and cannot close and make sure that we are keeping both traffic flow and pedestrian access open when we can.
Katie, we're going to have to let you go in just a minute, but before you go, I'm curious how you think the city is doing in terms of notifying. And I'm going to ask Nina about this as well, but I know the DOT will send out a notification. Do you feel like the city is being proactive enough for people like you to say, this is what's happening, warn your listeners, warn your viewers?
Yes and no. So we've gotten press releases like the one I have in front of me, which has been helpful. I would love some more, day to day or maybe weekly. This is going to be the big thing this week. That would be helpful, I think, getting the word out. But overall, like explaining the project on this press release has been great to understand what's happening. But if there are any minute changes or things like that, finding out weekly is definitely helpful.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being here, Katie. We know you've got to move on to another assignment today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Nina, I want to ask you about the notification element because I was on the city's website and there are all of these projects listed under the iDigJax website, which has got like kind of a holistic look, but they're not presented necessarily with like a map that might show impact. So you've got, the Adams Forsyth is a link and you can go and you can look at that project, but there's not necessarily a lot of overlap that tells you like big picture. If you're looking at the downtown map at the grid, this is what's closed. This is where you can't get by with more than one lane. Is there any effort or any momentum to try to do that or to do more direct communication like Katie was talking about?
Yes, so as Katie mentioned, we have been providing press releases for the city projects. However, as Lori mentioned, there's many development projects in other agencies. So what we will be doing over the next few weeks is developing a map that will show not only the city's CIP projects that are anticipating lane closures.
That's the capital improvement project,
Yes. We are going to also be putting other closures that are permitted through our Development Services Division so that we can have one place for all to take a look at what might be affected, for drivers to understand where they might want to change their routes. And we plan to be updating that every 2 weeks.
And how about communications with businesses? Because I know that particularly along a street like Bay Street, you have these delivery trucks that are there, servicing the bars and the restaurants and all of that. And they can also take up a lane on a day when there isn't perhaps street adjacent parking for them to fit into. And that's just one more thing squishing down the traffic flow.
So that's an effort that we're coordinating with Lori, that there's a variety of approaches that we can take to that. There's door-to-door door hangers, there's small group coordination with specific business owners. So as we progress with our projects, we will continue to expand and improve our processes for meeting with those folks who are affected on the corridors.
I can tell you from a DIA perspective, we sent someone out door to door last week again, just to knock on every door, talk to every business, figure out what their particular concern was so that we can kind of feed that information back to Public Works and the contractor and say, hey, could we make this tweak here? Could we open up a loading zone on the opposite side of the street because we're having a challenge with that? So, those kind of things.
We have an actual direct request from Stacy on Facebook. She says, please help cars exiting the Bank of America Tower on Forsyth a path to exit. Cars are being stuck in the garage for an extended period of time. And I'm guessing that's because, again, there's this backup on Forsyth. So that's a request. John on Facebook saying, Jacksonville, it ain't easier here. I ride the Skyway. The escalator at the James Weldon has been out for months. Elevators have also been down for months. The JTA board is now looking to have someone pulled. Also, when was the last time that your guests have ridden the Skyway?
Well, I haven't ridden the Skyway in about a year. But I do write it occasionally, and actually, our office takes it to lunch on the South Bank every now and then just to be a good downtown steward
Uh-huh.
and test it out. We have in again, this is a JTA operated facility.
Which is an independent city agency or authority.
Correct. And so, in terms of their anticipated repair date on the escalator or elevators, I really don't have any information, nor do I think Nina probably does.
Yeah.
But we do maintain good communications with JTA, so I'll make sure we pass that feedback
Right.
back to them.
This is, as I said, this is kind of part of this overall reshaping of some of the cityscape downtown. There's this I Dig Jax, branding. Ultimately, in a couple of years, what kind of significant changes do you think we're going to see on the downtown streetscape, Lori?
Well, both streetscape and parks. So it's a downtown infrastructure in terms of IDIG-JAX. And you will see very significant progress on the downtown riverfront parks. Riverfront Plaza Phase 1 will open by the end of this year. You have openings on the South Bank scheduled for Easter weekend this year, both on the River's Edge parks, which are the 4 acres on that former JTA site or JEA site down past the school board. Those
Oh,
parks
wow.
are now being completed,
Okay.
and the Riverwalk is extended there. And then you also have the additional elements of the park around Friendship Fountain being completed that'll open this spring. You'll have phase 2 of Riverfront Plaza well under construction, additional segments of the Riverwalk. So you have all that going on, in addition to, as Nina mentioned, not only the Forsyth and Adams two-way and the trees, but you'll have Hogan Street cycle track, and you'll have other bike lanes that you'll see. We're talking about bike lanes on Monroe and Liberty and Beaver, and those projects in the next couple of years will be coming online. So there'll be this grid of bike circulation within downtown, as well as enhanced pedestrian streetscapes and enhanced park spaces.
Nina, one of the places that is like a little bit of an escape for people sometimes when they're caught on that Acosta, the main street's closed, is that Park Street Bridge, right? And they can kind of sneak into the Riverside the back way. But that road is closed now too. So I just ask again, like, when these projects are being queued up, is there an understanding that that's all going to be happening at the same time? Or is it just sort of like the chips fall where they may? Once you kind of get contractors and you've got the funding, they start when they can.
Our goal is to coordinate those closures. There are some things that occur, whether it's unexpected utilities or other challenges that may arise that shift some of the schedules, and then there's some overlap. So, but you'll see that, as Lori mentioned, the some of these the overlap is going to end fairly soon with work on Bay and Jefferson ending at the end of this month. So hopefully those overlaps are going to be shorter, and however, there's going to be some delays, but we're going to try to minimize them as much as possible.
We also expect Park Street to open up later this summer.
Yes.
Okay.
So you'll be able to use Park Street again, where that Park Street segment is closed in Riverside.
So you're anticipating a fair amount of relief by maybe May or June?
Absolutely. However, warn everyone, there are additional projects coming online that will be starting. So there will still be, progress challenges, but they'll be in different locations. What you're seeing today, I think some of it will resolve by the end of March, and the rest of it, I think by May, June, July, you're going to see a lot of relief on that. Then we have to work through other things that are starting construction and make sure that the timing of those and the location of the detours works for the traveling population.
Lori, I would like to ask, while I've got you here, about a new search that DIA has begun that is going to search for your replacement. Tell us about what that search is going to entail. And I want to ask you in particular, I know that there's been some reporting that the board had wanted to get someone from outside Jacksonville. I'm curious what you think about that, if that ultimately is the direction the board goes in, whether that's a decision you would support, someone who's not familiar maybe with Jacksonville.
Thanks for that question. So I had announced my retirement, and the goal here is July 1. So the search firm is doing their stakeholder interviews to see what board members, members of council, other business leaders want to see in the CEO. And that work just started with our board last week. Many of my board members are very new. I have probably over half of my board has been appointed in the last year. And as a result, they have a different perspective than people who've been around doing this for 3 or 4 years. One of the things that we heard from several of the new board members was a desire to make sure we were at least looking out of town and looking for people who had successfully created vibrant downtowns in other locations. I know we have heard from city council members this desire to look at Charlotte and look at Nashville and look at some other cities that we aspire to be similar to. And one of the challenges is when we were talking to our consultant, both the pay range one would be facing if you were trying to hire someone away from those cities, and also just the likelihood of being able to recruit someone from there. So they were kind of tempering that. I would say some of my older board members, more seasoned board members, not older in age, or experienced board members weren't necessarily as focused on someone outside of the state of Florida, for example, and thought there was real value to knowing how to interact with mayor's office and city council and JTA and everyone else and coordinate those activities. But I think that we've built a really good staff who can handle a lot of that if you do bring in someone who doesn't have that local experience, but perhaps has ideas of different ways to do things.
Yeah. What do we know what's next for you after your retirement?
We'll see what the future holds.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to following up on that. Lori Boyer, Nina Sickler, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And drive safely. All right. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. Well, nearly 20 years ago, a Jacksonville couple began welcoming friends and strangers alike into their home to experience Ramadan. That tradition has now spread to the larger Jacksonville community, a partnership involving OneJax, WJCT Public Media, the Atlantic Institute, and GlobalJax. Along with the event's original host, I am joined now by community leader Sel Buyuksarc. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Very nice to see you again.
Same here.
And Mubarak, Ramadan?
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan
yes.
Mubarak. Okay. We're also joined by Elizabeth Anderson. She's the CEO of OneJax and one of the sponsors of Experience Ramadan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Elizabeth. Nice to see you. Also, Khan Ebrave, who is a volunteer for the Atlantic Institute. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
Pleasure to be
We're
here.
also joined by Lila Hartley, a student at Douglas Anderson School for the Arts. Good morning, Lila.
Morning.
Thank you for being here. Sel, can you remind us how this tradition began? It started actually in your own home.
Yes, around 2007, it was like a regular culture actually in the Ramadan. People celebrate with the neighbors. Actually, Prophet Muhammad said, celebrate and break your fasting with the neighbors. Doesn't say that your Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or the non-religious friends or the neighbors, just the neighbors. So we want to bring that tradition, and we invite the people to start the small groups, and maybe some couple days in the 2007. Actually, Leila and her family was one of the guests 2010, and we continue the tradition. And after growth and when we get so much interest, after 2016, we start inviting the strangers, if the people we know or not know, maybe we just say hi or not, and we meet with them, we invited to our home. And so far, we invited 4,500 people in our home.
That's extraordinary. And at some point, I guess it started getting a little bit bigger than even you could handle. Is that part of the reason
yesterday
for this?
we have 33 people, and the raining, and can you imagine that raining and the bad weather? People came to 33 people to our home. Everywhere parked. Some people were sitting on the floor and some tables. It was amazing experience.
And so iftar is a daily breaking of the fast. And so
Yes.
you're having people, friends and neighbors and strangers alike, coming every day on that.
It used to be every day, but these days, since we have the public events like WJCT hosting and tomorrow actually 9 Forward and the Mosh Museum and the other events like other organizations hosting. So that's why 15 to 20 days we are inviting the people our home.
So Lila, Sel mentioned that you have been attending dinner at his home as part of this tradition for many years now. You actually first started attending when you were just a toddler, maybe 2 years old, and you've written about this. Can you just tell us a little bit about that experience?
So when I was 2 years old, I went to my first iftar dinner with Sel and Angie with my family. And this story gets retold every time I go, is that I broke a vase on the back patio. Like, first time, like, basically meeting these people and a little bit mortified with my family. And I mean,
But they welcomed you back regardless. It wasn't,
Really?
you weren't on ban for breaking the vase. And you-
exactly. And it turned into this amazing friendship that's continued for well over a decade. And Ramadan has become something really meaningful to me.
And it has opened up some doors to you. I mean, you sort of say in the story that you wrote, and it's the name of the magazine is Elan, which is a youth literary magazine, and you're a creative writing student at Douglas Anderson.
Mhm.
But this has kind of informed a lot of your worldview. You now are looking at international relations. You've got some international relationships. Can you sort of describe why this was important in leading you to that broader view?
Making those connections are really important, and like of meeting new people, and like this is something that not a lot of people get to have that experience of doing. And like it really informed like how many different cultures and religions and like traditions there are, and how those don't have to be solitary. We can bring each other into them, whether it's the same culture or not.
Yeah. Khan, for people who are not familiar with the tradition of Ramadan and what it signifies, can you remind us again why the fasting, why the nightly observance where you're breaking the fast, and overall what spiritually you're trying to achieve?
Sure. In the age that we live, there's so much access to information, and I believe everybody has some sort of understanding of fasting in general. But in particular, Ramadan fasting is one of the pillar of Islam. So it's an obligatory practice that every Muslim has to do unless they are ill or they are pregnant and they are exempt. But other than that, it's one of the pillar of Islam, and a lot of the people, even Muslims, sometimes can interpret Ramadan as sort of a punishment from God. You know, you abstain from drinking, and how can you do this to your body? But if you ask maybe 90% of the Muslims when the Ramadan is over, and if you ask them, do you really happy that you fasted, and you kind of force yourself to go through this abstaining from drinking and eating and long fasting, they would say, great, thank God I did it, because I picked up so many benefits, so many spiritual and physical benefits that improved my character, my connection with God, rejuvenated my spirituality. So Ramadan is obviously the month where the Holy Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and this is the month of reconnecting with this Holy Scripture, and just to uh, examine yourself in this hectic life that we live in right now. We are constantly being bombarded with so much information, so much work and the busy lifestyle. But Ramadan gives us a chance to say, hold on, let me sit down and go back to myself. Let me contemplate on my essence of me being in this world. What's my purpose in this world? Why was I created for? And it's a great time to contemplate spiritually, and a lot of the people fall into the mistake of drinking and eating. This is the one aspect of fasting, but there's the bigger aspect of that, which is by doing so, you are abstaining from all the negative thoughts. You're abstaining from, from all those things. We call it God piety. You want to attain God piety. You want to be a person of consciousness. You want to be a God conscious person. This is the main goal of Ramadan, not just to abstain from. Otherwise, we can talk for hours about the benefits of fasting. There's extensive research about intermittent fasting, how it's healthy, and I truly encourage everyone to just give some time and research on your own. It's unbelievably healthy for your body to fast, and a lot of doctors can attain to it. But the spiritual aspect is what we have to focus ultimately.
How has it changed for you? I mean, you've obviously been doing this observance for a number of years. Do you find that it's different for you each year?
Definitely, each year is different. Each year, and in my personal experience, I feel like I have gained more from this fasting. Like I said, I get to connect with the holy text. I get to spend a lot of time contemplating and thinking and examining and scrutinizing myself. Because we are a being where we have certain habits that we sometimes hard for us to get rid of them. But Ramadan is amazing opportunity for you to work on those bad habits and work on yourself and self-discipline, and like I said, be the person of God.
Elizabeth Anderson, OneJax, has sponsored this event now for a number of years. What is it that is the goal of bringing Ramadan to the community, or bringing this event culturally? What is the significance of sponsoring an event that is closely tied to, a religion and that experience, trying to broaden that to the broader culture?
Sure. So this is the first time actually that we are partnering with Sel and the Atlantic Institute and GlobalJax and WJCT for this community Ramadan.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and we're really excited to do that because, I think that there is so much value to being able to experience these traditions with one another. Although this is part of the Muslim culture and the Islamic faith, lots of faith traditions and lots of cultures have varieties of practices where they abstain from eating, where they're fasting, or during Lent, where you give something up. So this isn't the idea that we would be disciplined in our faith or in our spirituality and less haphazard with the way that we move through the world, that we are intentional and have attention to the things that matter and connect us, I think is a universal way that we can bond together as community. And for us to be able to break down the barriers, to explore with some curiosity one another, and recognize that we're really just all people at the end of the day. The way that you practice your faith tradition and the way that I practice mine, or the way that I don't practice anything, we can still recognize and appreciate and value one another for what we bring to the community.
Sel, how has doing this annual opening of your doors and joining in with the community, have you seen changes in people that come? Have you formed relationships like you have with our young guest here, with other people that have proven significant in your life?
Yes, definitely. We saw so many changes with the people, especially the connection because it's Ramadan is not just the spiritual. At the same time, it's understanding, empathy, being thankful for, and we focus on that concept and they bring people together. Many people actually came together with all the different backgrounds, and some of them is admitted this was the first time they're getting together and listening each other and understanding. And when they see there is no difference, we are all human. Somebody this year told me actually, and I am copying with her permit, we are everybody, every human right now, whoever you are, breathing the same air. Not maybe we don't have the same blood, maybe we have the different background, maybe we have the different color of the skins, maybe we look different, maybe different ideas, but everybody is breathing the same air. And on the God of the eyes, every human is same, So we are focusing on that. And I was just sharing earlier when we were waiting at this point, somebody told me after this year one dinner. I mean, there are so many examples to the changes, people connected, they become a friend. But the one person was talking and she said, I was so desperate. I was planning to die or kill myself. I was so much in deep all the issues, but when I see the people, they have the same, and they try to help you, they hug you, they pray for you. I am hopeful. Maybe you save my life. That's one person, just enough to bring people together. Just one person. But around 4,000 people came. I think we changed so many people, and we bring people together and understanding. Don't discriminate. Don't put the people label or don't put people in the boxes. We are all one people, one love.
This story that you wrote, Lila, we'll actually have a link to it. It's called An Open Door, and we'll have a link to it on our website. It's a beautiful story. How, other than enjoying the company and enjoying the food, what is it that's special to you about attending a Ramadan event?
I think it's really about that connection, about that connection with new people and with old friends, and remembering to be grateful for those relationships and what we have, and that we get to break fast together.
And do you participate in fasting, or are you just kind of participating in these events as a community gesture?
Normally, I do not fast and just come for the connection. And
Right, right.
If you allow me, can I
Yes,
say
please.
something in favor of Lila? Because her parents are family. Her family is our family friend. So one of the dinners actually in Sel House years ago, I remember Lila was much younger, and it was a prayer time for us. We broke the fast and we wanted to pray, and Lila came up to us and said, "Can I join you in prayer?" It was such a cute thing that even that time she was experiencing and wanted to partake in that experience. So I wanted to kind of bring this up that Lila, she's maybe a great example of that. She grew up in this setting of interfaith dialogue, and she's very um, open and, like she said, grateful. And even though I believe she's Christian, and her father is mother very devout Christians, but she grew up in this setting, and she's very appreciative of different cultures and faith and traditions.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for someone so young to sort of have those different experiences. This event, Elizabeth, if people want to participate, I mean, it's here at WJCT Studios, but tell us a little bit about the event itself, what people could expect.
Sure, we're really looking forward to bringing in the community to sort of demystify what a Ramadan iftar is. And so we'll have a little bit of a panel conversation to learn about why this is an important and valuable holiday. We'll have dinner together. We will be able to either view or practice or participate in the prayers. And then we'll continue to have some table conversation. The Atlantic Institute is bringing guests to join us. So if folks have questions about the Islamic tradition or Ramadan in general as a time of of holiday observance, they're welcome to ask questions and to engage with one another. And I think it's a really great opportunity for folks to learn more about neighbors and community.
Well, the event is Wednesday, this Wednesday. It starts at 6. It's here at WJCT Studios. And thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute. Lumen Repertory Theater's 3rd season tackles themes of religious, faith, and psychological trauma.
The Players' Championship returns to TPC Sawgrass March 11th through 16th. Watch the PGA Tour's top players and enjoy local bites at the Stadium Course in Ponte Vedra Beach. More info and tickets at theplayers.com. Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you.
The NPR network informs and connects communities around the country, providing reliable information in times of crisis. Your support helps ensure that public radio remains freely available to everyone. Please make your gift to this station today. Here's how, and thank you.
Please call 353-9528 or visit us at wjct.org/radio.
I was sentenced to die in prison.
Walter Johnson received 5 life sentences for robbery and drug crimes, but a couple of decades later, he was released by the same judge who originally sentenced him.
I used to dream about being out. I would wake up and still be in. That's one of the most beautiful things, knowing that it's not a dream.
Judges who grant second chances and why. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
Next time on 1A, tax enforcement, consumer protection, rules for foreign influence, and shell companies. The Trump administration is rolling back many of the federal government's laws around finance and anti-corruption. For our weekly series, If You Can Keep It, we look at why these rules exist, what the government has done so far, and what it could mean for politics, business, and you.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, Lumen Repertory Theater kicks off its 2025 subversive season with the provocative psychological thriller Agnes of God. Joining me to discuss it and the season ahead are Brian Neese, Artistic Director of Lumen Repertory Theater. Welcome back, Brian.
Good to see you.
We're also joined by Josh Andrews, who is the co-director of the play Agnes of God. Welcome.
Hi, Ann. Thank you.
And Maggie Cox, who plays the role of Agnes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
What a neat role, first of all, Maggie. It is one of those that is just, I think, singular in the world of theater.
Absolutely. It is so challenging, but in a really invigorating way. Definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done in theater. She's just such a beautiful character and goes through so much, and it's just really fun to explore that character.
It is a complicated character. I mean, just for people who aren't familiar, briefly tell us what the storyline is.
Yeah, so it's about a nun, a novice nun, young nun, who is accused of infanticide.
Mhm.
And so she has to meet with a court psychiatrist to like see if she is innocent or not. And there's twists and turns there of her traumatic childhood and the psychiatrist's own experience with her sister and everything. And yeah, psychologically really gripping.
Yeah, and Josh, this is a story of three really strong women. There's the psychologist, as she mentioned, there's Agnes the nun, there's Mother Superior, and all three of these women are just such powerful roles. How do you approach directing and kind of helping to guide the characters of these three women?
Yeah, it's interesting. We have three characters and we have three really strong themes that kind of resonate with each one of them, which we've kind of been leaning into, which are faith, reason, and miracles. Faith on behalf of Mother Superior, reason on behalf of the psychiatrist, and miracles on behalf of Agnes herself, being a miracle herself, even. So, approaching it with that understanding, and we have three really, really talented, really smart actresses too, who really understand the approach and what we're doing. It's not been a great deal of work trying to get on the same page or in the same vision for that. So we're fortunate for that. I think Brian would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Brian, I mentioned this is the Subversive 2025 season. Explain to us why we're characterizing it that way and what the lineup is in addition to Agnes of God.
We're calling it subversive because it's one of our 5 sort of tenets of Lumen Repertory Theater. And this season we decided, in a world where extremes seem to be the narrative, left or right, black or white, up or down, pick your 2 categories, your binary, to recognize there's a lot of gray and a lot of nuance and a lot of truth in between the extremes. That feels subversive. And so we've embraced that with the themes of these plays this year. We're also, after Agnes of God, we'll be doing a piece by David Mamet, American Buffalo, looking at loyalty, misconceptions of manhood, things of that nature. After a very strong female show, this will be a strong male show. And then we're debuting Michael Jacobs' brand new play, Harlan and Brona Jump Out the Window. And you give away the plot in the title and then find out what happens economically and sort of spiritually to some degree with these very well-to-do people.
How do you make this character and this show relevant today? I mean, this is a classic in some ways. It was produced back in the 80s on Broadway. There was a film starring Jane Fonda and Meg Tilly in the early 80s as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is it a reinvention of some kind, or are you just sort of staying true to the...
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the movie and the play. I loved the movie, and my mom did too, so I've watched it a couple times. And I think it's just really important for me to try to come at this from a new angle, from my own life experience, and approach it differently than other actresses have before. Try to find nuances and new things we haven't realized about these characters before.
And we've really embraced mystery. The audience has to do work with our plays. We don't just hand all of the answers to you, but this play in particular, we expect the audience to come to their own conclusions.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think on that, we have the benefit too that we're dealing with age-old questions, not new questions. I mean, these are things that people still disagree about and have disagreed about since the beginning of time. Faith versus reason, the miraculous versus the mundane, I think is one that Brian has said that I really like. Things like that. I mean, nobody agrees on these things, and that's why it's interesting.
And are you comfortable as a co-director of this leaving that open and not trying to direct what people's conclusion is?
Well, I think it's important to have a point of view, but it's not important to spoon feed it to people, right? It's like Brian said. So it's important to know what you believe, I think, about these things, but to leave room for people to have their own impressions and own feelings. And that's what makes it art, I think, is that you're making a statement, but it's for other people to interpret.
Yeah, our job as artists is not to tell people what to think.
Right.
It's to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And then let people decide.
Yeah. Well, Agnes of God, it opens this weekend, March 14th. It runs through the 29th of March. Performance is at the historic San Marco Church. And you can get more information at lumenrep.org. Brian, Josh, Maggie, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks always.
Break a leg. That's our program. Thanks for listening. If you have questions or comments, you can reach out at First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight, or you can find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform or WJCT.org. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Corum. Jamie Valet is our associate producer, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us tomorrow when we talk to Mayor Donna Deegan about local Doge impacts and take your calls and questions. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. One texter call can wreck it all. Learn more through distracted driving presentations for teens and the workforce. Arrive Alive. Let's end